mics.
All right,
on.
Dropping some music right there. So, Justin, you didn't have anything pithy.
I panicked.
You panicked. You panicked. You had your moment.
I did.
Right there.
I did. He started doing a 3, 2, 1 countdown,
And you froze.
I did. I froze. I
Well,
couldn't think of anything.
Well, we're live. Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. If you're local, come visit us one Sunday morning at 10:30. If you're not local but looking for a good church, you can attend online. Our live stream is on facebook.com/Calvary316, or you can access our YouTube channel, which is at Calvary316.live. I am joined in studio, as always, by the man that needs no introduction, Pope Creighton Vaughn. How are you?
Well, hello, everyone.
So we have decided you're not wearing this hat permanently. This is just a gag that we're kind of going with. And maybe you want to explain why you're wearing that hat?
Yes, I'm wearing this hat because I am Italian and the Pope is funny.
And you recently found out.
I recently found out that I'm a quarter Italian. I'm clearly not 100% Italian. My skin is the wrong color. But yes, the joke is that I'm Italian.
Which
Zach
we just discovered explains why you took Latin.
Yes, I took Latin in high school.
You didn't even know it.
This was my destiny all along.
Yes. I sent you. Hey, you got the article.
Which one? What are we doing?
You got the article. You got the article, right? What are we doing? We're doing what we always do. Chaos.
All right.
So you got the article I sent you about what the Pope that just died, the Pope that resigned.
The thing about they're trying to find the Pope's nearest blood kin or something like that.
Because they don't have children, so they're trying to find,
right.
Which means it could be any Italian that has like lineage to the
official children.
Official
right.
children.
I wouldn't count under the official part.
So, I mean, have you checked out your 23andMe to see if you have any Pope connections?
If you're asking if a Pope Benedict the 12th came up on my 23andMe and I hadn't mentioned it up until this point, no, he has not come up until this point.
Well,
if he shows up, I will let you know.
Your Pope dreads are strong.
Leku. We've been over this.
No,
their head tails
Pope
like
dreads.
the Twi'leks have in Star Wars.
Pope dreads for sure. So you're not wearing that permanently, but it is a way for us to emphasize the new email address, which I'll pitch it to you. The new email address to the show.
The new email address, if you have questions, comments, concerns, is popecreighton@gmail.com. Hence the hat. I am the Pope. And you're emailing me with your questions, comments, concerns. That can be if you have questions about my Italian heritage, if you have questions about Zach's hands, if you have questions that you would like us to talk about on the show.
That's such a random thing to throw out there.
Well, I was trying to think of two random things. With my heritage
like
and your
to have
hands.
two tilapia for hands?
Oh, man.
But yes, you can email us at Pope Creighton. And if you have any questions that you would like us to talk about on the show, I'm always interested in ideas because it takes a lot to come up with all of these and make them good. So if you have anything you'd like us to talk about, popecreighton@gmail. Creighton is spelled Creighton, and Pope is spelled normally @gmail.com.
Pope Creighton. Now, you don't know this, but I did some research today to find out how much it would cost to get a picture of you with that hat as a t-shirt, like an actual picture of you and that hat. And it's like $20 a t-shirt. So
That's worth it.
I think it might be worth it. So we'll see what the future holds. We might roll out an actual
for that
Outlaw Radio Pope Creighton t-shirt. Even if it was like a silhouette of you, the glasses, black and white with the hat.
I'd be down.
We're also joined in studio. You've heard them chuckling up until this point. We got three amigos tonight. We got Mr. Nicholas Monty. We got Deal Daddy Derek. Deal Daddy, nice t-shirt.
Dude, thanks, man. I got it from getfedtoday.com. I'm getting fed every day. And you know what? Today, I have gotten fed.
Explain what the podcast is. Explain what the
podcast is a daily posting of throughout your week. Like if you're don't really know exactly what to dive into the word, it is a podcast selected from various teachers that is given throughout the week.
So like on Monday, you subscribe to the podcast. On Monday, boom.
Yeah, Monday you've got 5 postings throughout the week every day. Like it might be an hour, it might be 45 minutes, whatever. It's just a way for you to dive into the word, and that it's absolutely applicable if you're doing a job that you are allowed to listen to music or listen to a podcast. It is a way for you to get fed every day. It's awesome. I use it daily. It's great.
Very cool. We're also joined in studio by Spice Daddy. How you doing, Justin?
Well, I have some apologies to make for my lack of I guess, courage and brain function and not ruining the opening.
You really fell short.
I know, and I feel I deeply apologize to all my fans out there. I'll try not to let you down next time, because I really try to work hard to ruin Creighton's openings to the show.
You sure do.
And today I fell short, and I just want to apologize.
There are handfuls of people that are very disappointed by your lack of
there are dozens.
So what do you think about a handful, fingers of people?
Hey, one is enough.
One is enough.
One is enough.
Or is it?
Sure.
There you go. Wait, what? Huh?
That's some good awkward
My imaginary friends.
Some
are
awkward
enough.
dead air we've got. All right, so Creighton, the way the show works is Creighton will introduce a topic or a passage of scripture or a Bible character, something.
An idea.
Then it becomes my idea, my job to turn that idea into a Bible study. These guys are here to help me do that. So Creighton introduces a topic. This is unscripted. My job, along with these fellas, to turn that into something that's edifying. What's fun about the live stream aspect of the show. So this is a podcast. We are live streaming the recording of the podcast. The podcast, if Creighton will remember, drops on Thursday. So sometimes Creighton forgets to drop the podcast, as we saw this past week, but that's neither here nor there.
I am human. I've been trying to hide that for years.
You've tried to hide that for years. But so we're recording a podcast. We're live streaming at 8:00 on Wednesday nights. So it's unscripted. But what's fun about the live stream is that if you're watching, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube, you can interact with us in real time. And so it's a fun aspect. So we encourage your feedback, your interaction. We'd love to connect with you, the audience. Before we get to the topic, though, I kind of had something that I wanted to just unpack a little bit. In fact, I Facebooked it out earlier that we were going to kind of use this as a lead into the show. And that is like things that were central to our lives at one point that today are like completely obsolete. And so I kind of pitched it to you guys like, hey, put some thought into this. There's a point to this. Derek took this in a totally different way.
Dude, I did. So did Nick.
You both did. Yeah. I was on that page too.
So how did you guys take that?
Dude, go ahead.
Hold on, wait. You should introduce the topic before you ask me how to take it.
I'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say the topic.
Can I read the text that you sent?
Read the text.
Okay,
Pull it up. Read the text.
Let me pull it up.
I think
real
I just
quick.
did say what the topic was. Like
So
things that were central that no longer are.
You did.
Yeah. So
Yes.
he
Oh, you
just
sure
kind of
did.
like let it up to be like something that we kind of need to focus on the beginning, like things that were central to our lives years ago that are no longer are, and what we should learn from this. So internally, I took it as like things that the Lord was doing in our lives that like now as in a like just in the different point that I am in life that isn't central to my life. So I took it completely internally, like how the Lord is making me a husband, like what he's teaching me through that, like the things that I need to focus on, like through my career, through my job.
You took
And
this
it,
really
like,
deep.
Bro,
Yeah.
I absolutely
So did you, Nick?
took it deep.
Immediately.
Yeah.
What were you thinking, Nick?
Along the same lines. It was like, okay, years ago, and I was like, had to go through it. And I was like, okay, well, back then, all I cared about was having fun. I didn't care about anything else as long as I was having fun. But now I'm like, I have to be responsible for a family. Like, I got saved, like following Jesus, like relationship and stuff like this. And it's like, so I was trying to go, but now I got told.
Spice Daddy, how did you take this? You didn't even pay attention to the text. did you?
No, I did. I was at work, but I was thinking about it a little bit. I guess you didn't really quantify how far back. So I was thinking pre-COVID, post-COVID, because my life has been
BC.
Yeah, my life has been
AC.
pretty much flux since January of 2020. Really December of 2020.
Because you
but
were in Asia.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was trying to figure out, does he want me to go really far back? And because then it gets kind of spiritual. But for me, from what I got out of it is like, I immediately thought, what did I do pre-COVID that I don't do now? Kind of thing.
I took it as it's not what was spiritual then, it's full spiritual now. What is the Lord doing in my life? What was he doing then? Like, what are the things
I wasn't
that
thinking
like
about that at
what
all.
is the Lord doing in my life now? Yeah, no, like
So
I just got
so
crazy.
apparently I poorly phrased where I was going, because because you got here early and you were like, hey, I mean, I've been thinking about this all day and like, man, this is kind of heavy. And I was like, whoa. Like this was not at all.
You were like, no, I mean, like, did you send text messages back then? Like, did you use a digital phone? I'm like, oh, you dummy. Like, yeah, absolutely. I did not.
And I was just thinking, I used to travel a lot and now I'm stuck.
Well,
not traveling.
I told you, Derek, I was like, well, maybe God was trying to say something totally different to you.
And like you didn't even know the Lord had been speaking to me through this past week, this past couple weeks. And I was like, this is just the Lord confirming what he's doing in my life because of what you're saying to me, of all the things he's trying to work up in me and work on. So for me, it was way more of an impact that I was ready to share. And then so when you were like,
I don't know if I can
like,
say
were
this
you
on air?
focused on like table etiquette back then and not now? I was like, sure.
Well, let me give the audience an example of what I'm referring to. Because Creighton, you've got a really good one.
I'm very passionate about.
You have one that you're very passionate, and I don't want to steal. It's such a good one. I could steal it and kind of make it my own, but I'm not going to do it. So let me throw out an example, and then there's a point to this. There is a spiritual direction. There's an idea.
I just went
totally different than anything you guys were thinking about. Yeah. So like for example, and we have he will remain nameless. We do have a guest in studio who is closer to my age than anybody else. So you'll this will resonate with you. You're way older. That's right. You're ancient. So you guys, I already know, Justin, maybe you, but I know you three guys that there's no chance that you're going to understand this. But so when I was in high school and I got my first bank account, right? So I got a job. I was making some money. My dad took me. We opened a bank account at First Union. So I got a checkbook. You know, there was not an ATM card. I think that came a little bit later. I would go and deposit money, and then it was cash, or I'd write a check. But along with the checkbook would come this transaction ledger, right? And so my dad taught me as a high schooler that, like, hey, you have to know how much money you have before you write a check, because you don't want to bounce a check, spend more money than you have. But the only way that you can really know how much money you have is to document it down in this little transaction ledger, so you can keep a running total, so you know how much money you have. And so first, Craig, I know you've never written a check in your life.
So I just want to put it out there.
You've never written a check.
I have never written a check, but I am very familiar with what you're talking about, because Nick's wife still does that. Doesn't she?
Yeah, I mean, if we write checks.
She used Ledger for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, so
she's the only person I've ever seen use one.
So you don't even write a check.
Never written a check in my entire life.
Right. So first, checks were kind of an essential thing that nobody writes a check anymore. And you even see this in the way that like church giving manifests.
Oh yeah.
Like, people will use, the closest you get to a check is bill pay. Now there's a few old schoolers, few at this point, that drop a check in the offering box. But nobody carries a checkbook around. Nobody writes a check. In fact, it's actually kind of like it's got your bank account information on it, like your address. Like it's
like, why would you carry?
It's not really a safe thing to be carrying around.
Yeah. Not to mention, at this point, there are lots of retail places that don't take them.
That's true. Well, that's true. You wrote me a check. You wrote me a check a few weeks ago.
At my job, when I went on direct deposit, they needed a voided check.
Yeah.
I was like, what would happen if they were younger than me? Yeah. Like I just happen to have some old checks lying around that I hadn't used in years because nobody uses checks anymore. But like nobody asks for voided checks anymore for direct deposit. You just put the information in.
But you got to realize, like 15 years ago, this was the way that you did it. There wasn't another way to do it.
If I get behind someone 25 years ago,
I'd say 15.
If I get behind someone in line that wants to write a check, like at Home Depot, I go there a lot. I go to another line. I'll have a cart full of lumber that's like, I'm going to self-checkout. Like, because I know it's going to take 15, 20 minutes for that person to check out. And I was like, no, I'm not dealing with that.
It's like, dude, you might as well brought gold bullion. We got to weigh him with scales to have enough. So it's like, so as an example of what, like something that was central to our lives, this is where I was going, something that's central to our lives at one point that is completely obsolete. Again, checkbook, ledger, again, completely just non-existent.
Dude,
Now,
I'm not that much older than my wife, but when she just like takes her phone and puts it over the thing and it boop, and just does that, I'm like, holy crap.
I know, magic. It's like magic.
It's like, yeah, it's not even swiping my card or putting my card in. She just takes her phone, boop.
It's
and then it
barely
scans.
money
I'm like,
anymore.
what?
Oh, that's funny. No, because we went. So I've never done that, like the Apple Pay.
No?
I've never
great.
done it. So Nick and I went to pick up some chicken wings a couple weekends ago, and so we pulled into the parking lot. Publix was next door, and Carrie, Nick's wife, was like, "Hey, can you pick up a dessert?" And Nick was like, "We're getting out of the truck," and I was like, "Oh, I'll grab the wings. I'll pick you up." And he's like, "Oh man, I left my wallet." I was like, "Oh, hey, no big deal. Here's my credit card. You can use it." He goes, "Oh no, I got my phone." I was like, "No, seriously, take my credit card just in case that doesn't work." Nick was like, "No, it'll work." I made him take my credit card. I was like, "It's magic.
I haven't taken
sorcery.
It's fine.
I haven't
Don't
taken
trust
my
it."
card out of my wallet today at all.
Wow, that's
I've
crazy.
only used my phone today.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Even
So-
the dude, I was at the gas station one time and he was like, "Oh, your card might have the tap." And I was like, "I don't know, man, it may." And I tried to swipe and it didn't work. But then I held it there and it was like, boop. And I was like, it does.
It does. Technology
right.
I have, I didn't
Yeah.
realize. Now, Creighton, you've got a good one. You've got a good
so
one.
I feel very strongly about mine. Mine is phone etiquette because I grew up with a home phone. And when I was like 9 or 10, I think my parents first got their cell phones.
You need to define
But
a
we
home
had-
phone.
Oh, right. A home phone is like a landline that is in your house and does not leave.
And it's like connected to the wall.
It's
Do you
connected
really
to the
think we
wall.
got Zoomers listening
Like,
to us
Dude,
right
no,
now?
there
might.
are some people. I saw a message. It was
Zoomers?
a video. They
Here-
were like, it would be crazy if there was like one phone to go
For the
for
house.
everybody in the
Yeah.
household.
But do you
And
think
there
we
was
have
somebody-
Zoomers listening to us that you have to explain?
Maybe,
the house
but
phone?
the Lord can use us.
Maybe,
However.
man. And for the record, we're moving past the actual home phone because that's not important.
Which
home
is an
phone-
example of something that's obsolete.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a thing. We all use the same phone. And so when I answered the phone, it could be for me or my older brother or my parents. And so it was very important that I answered the phone. "Thank you for calling. This is the Vaughn residence. How may I help you?" Or something like that.
Yes.
Where you said, "Hello,"
This is the Adams residence.
You were
This is Zach.
cordial.
Yeah.
and you tell the person who called who they're talking to,
Amen.
right? I still do that to this day. I've worked in customer service, both on the phone and off phone, my whole adult life. And I've adapted that to whatever job I'm working at.
Hey,
So
it's
when I
the
was
Pope.
working, it was,
Okay.
"Hello, thank you for calling Auto Parts. This is Creighton. How may I assist you?" Because that's what you do. I cannot stand it. It bothers me to the core when I get on the phone, whether I'm calling or receiving the call, and I get,
What's up?
"What's up?"
What's up, man?
Or
Hey.
just,
Hey.
"Yeah, I need to talk to so-and-so." Or the worst is just, "So-and-so." Like, have you ever had that? Somebody-
Nick's the worst.
Does
Nick is
do
the
that?
worst.
You see, I don't talk to Nick on the phone.
Now call Nick.
Hold
He's
on.
terrible. He's the worst.
Look at him.
Hey,
Look at him. Look at his guilty face.
Hey, if I call Nick, this is what happens. Yo, what's up?
Yeah.
No, it's not. What's up? Hello.
See, I don't mind the greeting,
Hello.
but
Yeah.
kids nowadays
Cool. Bye.
don't know how to end the conversation.
That's true.
They will call our store
They just hang
and
up.
there'll be an awkward silence, and I don't know if the conversation's over or not. And then they just hang up on me.
Yes. That's
And I'm sitting there like,
No.
can you at least
closure.
say, "Okay, thank you," and then bye or something? Let me know the conversation's
yes,
over.
absolutely. Dude, that falls in the same thing. It's phone etiquette. It's gone the way of the dodo, and it bothers me to no end. You should, whenever you get on the phone, unless you're very familiar with the person, like I don't, like Nick is a kind
real
of a
quick.
different one.
Let me
I
add
kind of get why
a
Nick
detail.
answers
Let me
that
add a
way.
detail, Creighton, because
I'm getting all worked up. I'm sweating.
I know. But let me add a detail because the reason that it was so important to do that at home was because when the phone rang, it was a mystery.
It could be anybody.
It
Yes.
could be anyone in the world on the other end of that call, which is why you had to treat it with the utmost respect and reverence.
Bro, when you had caller ID, you
Caller
sit
ID
there and
changed
let it ring for 2 minutes until the name popped up, and then
Right,
you
right, and then you
answer
were-
it.
Or do you remember where you did like the star 91 to find out the
Yes.
who called and hung up?
Star 69.
Star 67.
Star 69, whatever
I
it
thought
was.
67.
No,
69.
Something like that.
No
Star
one needs it
67 is to
anymore.
Call them back.
Oh, copy.
So, Creighton, you're right. Phone etiquette
It's
is
gone
gone,
the way of the dodo.
and it's a lost art, and it's a shame.
It's
a shame.
crying shame.
And that's basic communication.
Exactly.
It's not even like it's a big deal. It's just how to talk to another human being trying to get something done.
But at what point will we? And here's kind of the interesting thought experiment. At what point will will people look back and be like, hey, you remember when like you talked on the phone to someone?
Yeah.
It's because you're not allowed to offend anybody anymore.
Well, it'll be video or it'll all be text. There won't be like, I'll tell you.
No, you'll have your Oculus on and then you'll just FaceTime them and then they'll ping in with your avatar and be like, yo, what's up, man? And they'll be at your fake AutoZone store and they'll order the part.
Listen, you'll really be in the zone then.
Yeah,
listen, I'm telling you, there's going to be a day where there's a future Outlaw Radio episode of like other people talking.
It'll be Ready Player One.
And they'll be like, hey, remember when like in order to get in touch with someone, you had to enter numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you actually had to enter, like there was an area code.
You had to know their number to get in touch with them.
You don't even need to know numbers now.
Yeah.
Like I'm lucky to remember my wife's number. That's the only one I know.
That's terrible.
And I remember my house, my childhood home number.
I still got that one in my head.
That's like the only thing I remember. Any other examples? You guys have any other examples?
No, we just got a great idea.
They've sidetracked.
We're gonna do an episode that's completely
Virtual.
in the VR.
Oh my gosh.
Headspace.
You guys are
full
morons.
episode. Like, yeah, we're here, but we're in VR doing it.
You either
That's
move
gotta-
into the future or you get left behind. Okay.
Absolutely.
You know
We're
what
gonna
we'll
be
do
underwater.
is we'll put you two in VR headsets and we'll have a normal conversation.
We'll be at the house and we'll tune in.
I've got one.
So okay, you got one next.
I got one.
All right.
Actually, go into the store to buy everything you need instead of shopping on Amazon
Yeah.
for everything
Yeah.
you need.
I tried to avoid the store at all costs.
I know. Like, I mean, nowadays everyone is. I mean, I'll buy everything on Amazon if I
Yeah.
can. If it's cheaper and easier, like if Amazon has Amazon Fresh now, and I know a lot of people even get their groceries now from Amazon.
Mhm.
Like, so
It's true.
I just do
Yeah,
that
we-
because I hate talking to people.
thanks
Nah.
for transitioning there.
No, we do all our grocery orders. We order everything, pull up, wow, they pop it in the truck. Hey, this was submitted. I'm like, hey, don't do that ever again. They'd be like, hey, I'm sorry. And then
Any-
I just drive off.
any
That's
other
it.
any other examples? Because I'm gonna transition us real quick. Anything else? All right. So I was watching. This is what kind of brought this to my mind. Something that I was thinking about. I saw. So there's some really cool companies, and it's really cutting edge technology where they're able to take very old video, and they're able to restore it, and then they can colorize it. Just like you can see some very cool, like really old film of baseball games,
Like
things
the
like
30s.
that. Like even before that, like very early video, and they're restoring this stuff, digitalizing it, colorizing it, etc. Well, I saw a video, and this was like actually the point of the video was it was just like it was a screen view of just people walking. It was just like normal daily life in New York City in the 30s. Justin, you're looking at something. What are you looking at?
Is it more VR stuff?
It's
He's just being a distraction.
Don't worry about it, yeah.
He's just being a distraction. No, so it's like it was just time lapse video of people living their lives on one of the New York streets, and you watched it, and there were two things that like really jumped out. And this was just normal life, just normal people walking. They weren't filming anything specific. It was just kind of a time lapse deal. And it was only like 20 seconds. But the two things that jumped out immediately was one, how skinny everyone was.
oh yeah.
Like how you go back, and we want to say like we're really healthy. Oh man, we've gotten rid of cigarettes, and we're all like people are fat.
Dude,
Like-
smokes cigarettes all day. Sucralose is the killer.
Listen, but you just watch like people were. My great grandparents lived into their hundreds. My grandparents have all lived into their 90s, and they didn't eat any of this. They didn't eat fast food junk, but they ate margarine and fats and oils and like all the things on the food pyramid that say are like, you shouldn't eat. Like they pounded it but they worked, they lived, that was the first thing you took away. It was like, wow, everybody's like, you don't see any fat people. Even then I saw there was video of like California And they did like a side by side of like today, the beach in like Long Beach, and then like in the 60s. And again, he's like, oh my goodness, everyone's fat today. And there was not a single fat person on the beach, 70 years ago. And it was like stark. The other thing, and I know that's kind of anecdotal. The other thing, and this is where I'm going to end up going, is everyone was well dressed. Like every single person on the street, slacks, button down shirts, coats, top hats, women were in dresses. Like everyone was put together. And like, I remember like in the 50s, 60s, like, people would mow their lawn in slacks. Like you went outside, like the only place that you were what we would call like in comfy clothes or casual was at home. If you left or you had company come over, like there was a certain just cultural decorum about the way that you presented yourself. And it was just such a stark thing to see. And again, we want to claim to be so progressive, but it's like these people cared about their health. They cared about the way that they looked. There was an attention to that. There was a measure of self-respect, societal respect. I don't exactly know how to pin it or how to describe. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You had a measure of self-decency that you held yourself to. You had a standard that you held yourself to, like within your work or how you presented yourself outside of your work. Like you had that standard. And now it's like the standard is skewed because
there's no standard.
Yeah,
there is no standard
because it can be anything. The person that you're talking to is the person, not what they're wearing. That's what society will tell you. It doesn't really matter. But at the same time, society does care about what you're, because like, bro, is that like a big baggy Louis Vuitton shirt? Dang, that's fire. But you look like you were garbage.
So Nick, you're going to jump in?
I was just going to say, I was the only thought that popped in my head is like,
I'm going to take this in an angle you guys are not expecting, by the way.
I got a question for you. When did it start to change? Like my question is like, when did that start? Like, was that the 70s hippie movement that maybe started to change? Like, I'm not sure because I'm not that old. I
don't know.
Like,
he's not on camera. He's not Mike. He is that old. Audience member.
1930s.
Was this in the 40s or 50s that this began to transition?
I used to have to get dressed up to fly.
You had to get dressed up to fly?
I was a kid.
Okay.
My dad would be like, we're going to the airport. Get dressed up.
And that was late 60s. No, that was in the 80s, 90s.
Okay,
even for me,
though,
even for me, like there was an aspect to flying. Even nowadays, like there's something about being put together and feeling put together when like you're going out and about. I don't know. Let me make this weird right hand turn for a minute, and no one is going to expect where I'm about to go with this. So I've been thinking about all of this, thinking about the attire deal. Let's talk about church and the clothes we wear at church.
Come as you are movement.
Okay. So, but real quick. So I grew up in Calvary Chapel in the Deep South. And one of the things that made Calvary Chapel very revolutionary, I would say, in its broad sense, was how laid back it was when it came to how you came to church. And that was one of the things, if you watch the Jesus Revolution movie, like even the early people were like upset about the hippies coming in because they weren't wearing shoes. They were dirty. They hadn't bathed. And there's the scene where one of the elders is like, we just got this new shag carpet put in. And Pastor Chuck that next Sunday is washing feet. Like he's outside of the church washing hippies' feet so that they can come in as an act of service.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, right.
Like 3 weeks.
Yeah. So
that was also.
So there was like within Calvary Chapel, it was hey, come as you are. And in the South, it was really revolutionary because it was traditionalism. It was you wore your Sunday best. It was black tie. It was a coat.
You don't get in unless you're in a blazer.
It was you dress the part. And the logic was, well, you got to give God your best. And you got to demonstrate your best for the Lord. and God deserves it, and we're going to bring God our best. I heard my grandfather say this. We wear our Sunday best. That's what it was called. But it was about respecting God, and you wanted to show up in a measure of respect to the Lord, and then the counteracted, like the revolutionary component was like, well, God is not a respecter of persons. And God doesn't see the outside of a person. From God's perspective, it doesn't matter what you wear. It matters that you're here. And that was the justification for this entire cultural shift within church. Calvary Chapel was at the lead of that. The only time we dressed up at church was on Easter and Christmas. That was the only time we would dress up to go to church. And even now, like at Calvary 316, it is a very casual, come as you are. And that is just about universally accepted now. That is kind of the mode, the way it operates. And the church has kind of reflected a cultural movement in that sense. And you could probably all tie it back to the hippies within the church, within culture, and it's just kind of progressed. I could tie that into the seeker-friendly movement because it's like, well, we want people to come as they are. We don't want to feel like that there's any kind of wall or barrier for them coming. Be comfortable. And listen, and I'm not going to reach some grand point or get on some soapbox here. That's not my intention. I'm the guy that wears jeans and black T-shirts most Sundays because black is slimming. I'm that guy. I don't dress up for church. I've never in my entire life dressed up for church. I do have a few standards for myself. I don't wear flip-flops, and I don't wear shorts when I'm preaching. And the only reason I don't do that, I don't care if you do or don't. It's just I do pastor in the South, and there are still I don't want what I'm wearing to be a barrier for someone listening to what I have to say. And so again, I'm not wearing a polo. I'm not wearing a blazer. Like I said, most of the time it's black T-shirts and blue jeans, and and sneakers. So again, keep that in mind. That being said, why I completely agree with the idea of hey, if this is about earning points with God, I need to show God my best. Well, that's a reason to rebel against it. Is that the reason that maybe we should dress up for church? Is there another way of thinking about it that isn't rooted in that justification? And I think we can maybe even look at that culturally. What about the respecting of the uniqueness of the day? What about hey, I'm going to this place. I'm doing something holy. This is special. This is not normal. This is not a normal. It's not like I'm going to Applebee's. It's not like I'm going to the movie theater. I'm not going to be entertained. I'm going to meet with God. I know he doesn't care what I look like, but from a psychological standpoint, shouldn't I respect where I'm going? Shouldn't there be some measure of decorum within my own heart, within myself, about does God care if I wear what I wear to the gym to church? No, he doesn't. Should I care? Because is it the same place? Now in our culture, we don't give consideration to anything anymore. We've removed decorum, whether it's on the phone or whether it's this or whether it's that, whether it's table, just generally we've removed decorum. We've removed decorum from about every component of society. Used to be that you had to dress up at church to go to work. Why? Well, because you're at work, and that's different than being at the ball field or going to see a game. You're at work. And okay, we'll give you a casual Friday. Why is it casual Friday? Because we actually kind of lay back on Friday. And so our decorum is going to reflect the seriousness of the day. We're going to check out a little early. It's Friday. We'll allow it to be casual because guess what? The atmosphere on Friday is different than it is Monday through Thursday. That's why we have a casual Friday.
So I got something to add. So you're talking about.
I'm not making any points, by the way.
Ahead.
I'm just kind of having a fun conversation.
Go ahead.
Something I'm thinking about.
So you're talking about shouldn't our dress kind of talk about our seriousness and where we're going and stuff, or however you want to put it. When you said that, hey, this is a persona from, hey, I'm going to church and stuff like that. I was like, we do that for our first dates. who goes on a first date and dresses in gym
Dude,
shorts?
I'm 16 years into marriage and I dress up for dates.
I know, and that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Like when you go out to a nice restaurant when you're married, you dress up, you look nice for each other. Like there's a seriousness about that too. So like, I mean, I was just bringing more points.
For sure.
That, like, if you can do it, why do you do it for that and not do it for church? Or
So here's an example going off of our buddy's point about dressing up as a kid to go fly. Well, why did you do that? I know you're off camera, but what was the logic? I can explain it, but the logic.
It was just something you didn't do every day.
Exactly. It was unique.
It was unique.
So isn't that a cultural thing though? Not necessarily like.
Okay.
But every culture is different, is what I'm saying. That's an American culture thing.
That's true.
It might be a British culture thing, and it might be a cultural, cultural.
It could be a Western thing,
right? And so I think to say one thing, because in the Bible says if you're in the presence of God, cover your head, kind of thing. And we're here in the South, they say take off your hat when you're praying, kind of thing. Like, which one is correct? And when you start asking all these questions, throwing out all this stuff, you have to take that into account too.
Well, I will say, theologically, you're free,
right?
Like we're walking by grace. Like I'm not like if
you're not prescribing clothing.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not saying like, listen, if you're like, well, I don't want to wear a dress, I'm not going to church. But I'll go to church if I can wear comfy pants. Go to church and wear comfy pants. Like if that's the debate here in your own heart, your own mind, then just go to church. Like it doesn't. Like I'm not trying to diminish anything. But going back to flying, as a kid, what's changed? What's changed? The reason why there's not this compulsion to get dressed up to go fly is because the experience of flying is different than it was then. Back in the day when you got on an airplane, it was special, it was unique. You did it only a handful of times in your life. And when you went, there was pomp and circumstance. There was a red carpet that led you up the stairs to get into the plane. And you had the stewardess and you get little wings that you could put and you could meet the captain. And there was like a full course meal that was delivered. I mean, it was the actual experience of flying warranted the decorum.
True.
The reason that you don't have the decorum now is the experience. It's cattle herding. I mean, it's like
horrible.
It's there is nothing special. In fact, you want sweatpants and a hoodie because you're going to be uncomfortable anyway because you're packed in like a sardine.
It's less things that you have to go through TSA in, so you can just pop your shoes off, throw them in the bag, and then move through.
I'm wearing Crocs,
my slip-ons,
because I got to take my shoes off 12 times.
I'm wearing my joggers because they don't have that many pockets to keep things in.
Exactly. But here's the thing. So we can explain why there's been this shift in perspective when it comes to like flying or other things. There's not decorum when it comes to work for a lot of different reasons. Mainly, people don't go into the office as much. Like it's not. Now there are certain instances where you do have to have decorum. I have a friend that works from home in the banking industry, and I FaceTimed this person the other day about something church related, and I noticed kind of uniquely they were very dressed up, makeup on, hair done, and I was like actually kind of taken back because this is a rare thing. And I was like, what's with okay, it's your wife. It's your wife. Nick, it's your wife.
Yes,
I thought it was Darren.
Yeah, we all knew that.
You guys are debating who this is.
Yeah, no,
so
my makeup
Carrie.
was not that good.
So
that
Carrie
day.
was all dressed up, and I was like, hey, did someone
Who's
die?
getting
You go to a
married?
funeral? What's going on? And she's like, no, I actually have an important meeting, an important Zoom meeting. But it was like, that was interesting to me because it was like, no one told her she had to do anything.
No.
But there was an acknowledgement that like, this is something different. This is unique. This demands some decorum. My only point, and we've taken quite a bit of time for this.
I had a big question today.
Well,
my only point, and we can get to it. But my only point is like, church. You know, if you're dressing up to try to earn points with God, don't. Like that's not. Don't. But if there is an aspect to it where it's like, you know what, I need to make sure my own heart that I'm approaching this with not just this kind of casual or cavalier attitude, but that like I'm going to connect and approach the living God. Like, shouldn't there be some measure of decorum? Now, I'm not talking about wearing hats or not wearing hats. Wear a nice hat. Like, I don't care, but or don't at all. Like, there's no judgment here. We've lost something in our society. Yeah. And I think something that we've lost, we also see kind of reflected in church. And it's so easy to be like, well, look at those people dressed up in suits going to church. But maybe there is something that we jump the shark, so to speak, and we didn't actually think more broadly about our own heart. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just taking into account what you're doing and just not going through the motions of doing something, acknowledging what you're actually doing and what the weight of that actually is.
Completely agree.
So I have some disagreements with what you said and some agreements, and I'm trying to parse them. Because some of them I think are built. Hold on, I have to actually take that headphone off.
It's hard when it's unscripted. You didn't know where we were going, right?
So it's hard to parse it, because part of me is saying, yeah, but like the clothing doesn't matter, which you're obviously saying. Like, I'm not saying that you are not saying that, but that is still, my brain is hitting that wall and not getting to what I actually want to talk about. I would like to point out that it does make sense that as we've lost the decorum that accompanied our attire, we have lost some of the decorum in terms of the way that we actually look at Sundays.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I think those trajectories follow each other very, very closely.
Used to be, you would never have youth sporting events on a Sunday ever,
right?
And you wouldn't on Wednesday.
Yep,
right.
I remember
those were 2 times, and this wasn't long ago.
Yeah,
it's totally sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Today, not at all.
Yep.
I think it makes sense.
It's interesting.
Those two things, those follow each other, and it makes sense that the more you devalue the actual act of going to church, even if it is in small increments, because it was and it always is. That's how devaluing works, in that you devalue it a little bit as you go. You wear less nice shoes, wear less nice pants over and over and over again until, we have teenagers showing up in Crocs and street pants, which
my goodness,
drives me
coffee
wild.
house Sunday.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, I just again, along this line, you can track the same thing with church architecture.
Oh yeah.
Like, you go back to you go way back, and I mean, the churches that were built are cathedrals with massive stained glass windows,
big pulpits.
They're works of art. The actual building is a work of art that took hundreds of years to even build in some instances and display art. And as a result, it was like, and it was designed to reflect something.
You want to honor being there. Like,
yes.
It's an event that you're even going there to do that.
And then even in American culture, like, the church in town had a unique identifier. It was made to be different because it had the steeple that could be seen from anywhere. You go back to colonial days and you could find the church easily, and that's the whole intention of the steeple. I mean, it rose above everything else. But even then, there was a decorum about even the facility. From the pews to the architecture of the building, to the way that there was a decorum to the facility, a tradition to the facility. But over the last 20 years, we've seen that all but completely go away, even in the new buildings that are built. There's very little difference between the church buildings that are built and the IKEA.
In fact, some of them are using IKEAs.
Right.
But is that disparaging?
Or a Starbucks. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Well, what I'm asking is that disparaging on Western culture views of Christianity in the church, or is that an overall generational thing? Because, when I've been to other countries, it's been in a shack or in the middle of a building where the police can't find you, kind of thing.
Right.
Like,
and I think that
what are you
stuff.
complaining about? Are you complaining about the church in the West, or are you complaining about church culture in general?
No,
that's two different things.
Mainly speaking about the West,
maybe even just the South.
And we see that. I mean, I think
just too comfortable.
We can even speak just broadly culturally. The buildings that were built, like Penn Station, was a work of art. Like, you go back to the buildings that were built post-revolution, post-Civil War era, up through the 20s, 30s, 40s. maybe even early 50s, like the Empire State Buildings like they were built with style, with flair. But then you get to the 70s and the architecture flipped to a very Soviet bloc style. There was nothing unique, nothing pretty. Like Western culture, we have seen modern architecture's garbage. Like it looks terrible.
And the arty architecture is awful looking as well.
Like culturally,
architecture as art looks terrible. I don't know if you guys have looked at any of those houses with their.
And listen, by the way, to make a point, because it'd be easy. It's easy to say, well, the building doesn't matter when it comes to the church, and in that sense, you're right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But you can't say it doesn't matter at all. And my point being is that, like, if you go back to Leviticus, God calling out a people, God instituting a people, God developing a nation, God was so specific about how they were to be organized, how the culture was supposed to be structured, how it was supposed to operate. And he was very specific on how the tabernacle was to be built, was to be designed. I mean, God gave a blueprint because it modeled heaven. Like, God cares about spaces, how we interact with spaces, how we engage in spaces. Now, yes, within the new covenant model, we don't come to a space to encounter God. We are the temples of the living God. And that's all true. But it's still the same God. That's the God of the New Testament, same God of the Old Testament. And you look at Revelation, you look at the New Jerusalem, like there is beauty. I just think we've lost some of that. And yes, you see something in Western American culture, Western culture in general. You've seen this trend, whether it be the architecture, and then the dress, the attire, the way that people interact, all of that. But you see the same thing happening also within the church.
Yeah.
Are there components of that are warranted and justified in both? Sure. My only point in the conversation, not to make any point at all, is that I had always just rejected out of hand the idea that maybe you should dress up a little bit for church because God is not a respecter of persons. I've always looked at it from how God views me, as opposed to what I'm wearing reflecting how I should view the situation.
It's kind of like a lack of reverence.
Yes and no, I don't want to get that hard. And I think Nick makes a great point about a date night. Hey, my wife and I, like, there are times, it depends on where we're going or what we're doing, or the scenario. It's funny, at Calvary 360, nobody dresses up except for Easter, and that's coming up. And it's funny, all the ladies wear big hats, and everybody like seersucker pants, and like everybody kind of, it's funny, the church that like is about as casual as you can get kind of goes all out when it comes to half the church looks like they're extras in Peaky Blinders, Yep. We just get this really funny, more suspenders on Easter Sunday than ever on any other Sunday. Yep. It's a thing. But I don't know, in my own mind, I'm thinking,
like an Easter egg.
Should we, music. I think that's something that it's fun at Calvary 360, in the way that our music reflects also something old. Like in a move where so many churches abandon a traditional sounding music, right? For a modern contemporary. Let's take the hymns. Okay, well, let's do a hymn so we connect to the past. But let's do this hymn in a modern twist. So we can have the hymn, but we're going to do it in a modern twist. As opposed to like, well, why not just do the hymn the way the hymn was written? Like, what's wrong with that? Like, isn't there something that should connect us back to things and whatnot? So, Creighton, we got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
To talk about what?
I was going to do Calvinism and Arminianism.
Oh, great. That's fun.
Not even a joke. That was the plan, was to do Calvinism and Arminianism.
There's no way we're doing
and
that.
You took 10 minutes.
There's no way.
With clothing.
No, we're not doing that.
I would like you to spend the next 10 minutes defining Calvinism and Arminianism.
Oh, man, we're not going to do that.
Pick it up next week.
We're not doing that.
That was I've been trying to think, while also answer your questions, of something else I could do at this time.
No, that's fine. I got something.
I got a question that goes.
No, I have something that we can do in a minute, but let's finish the. Okay, we've committed to this. We're not going to get to Calvinism and Arminianism. Thank God we're not getting to that. It was predestined for us not to.
Was it? Oh man.
Yeah. Was it?
I guess it was.
Was it?
Justin, you were gonna
I guess coming from a standpoint of where I can see this being, because I guess having been a traveler, like being involved in a few different cultural references. Of
yes, for sure.
I guess cultural Christian
You're bragging
aspects.
about your world traveling again.
I'm trying
I get
to
it.
paraphrase this question.
Is this
like,
when you were in Egypt or Israel or China, Mongolia?
I think God, he created you, and he created you to be in your culture and your family. And so I think whatever culture you're in kind of needs to reflect that culture in reverence to God. You know what I mean? So if your culture, if your highest reverence to God is wearing your best clothes, then do it. But at the same time, I don't think that needs to define you, because a lot of people, like, that's all they focus on, and it becomes a contest of who can wear the best suit or the best hat or whatever, you know. And I think it takes away from the focus of God, who should be the focus during the Sunday worship. Whereas, you know, back in the New Testament days, they would get slaughtered if they dressed differently on Sunday going there, or just, you know, few years ago, if I dressed in full suit every Sunday and started going to certain places, the police would have watched me and known something was up, kind of thing. You like the focus.
I totally get what you're saying. Yeah.
And I guess where does that fit in with it?
The intention of the observation was more of to spark a conversation, really.
Yeah. So I would say that where that fits in is that we're looking. So for Americans, I'm mostly on board with Zach's saying. Like, we don't have any of the constraints of the early church or the persecuted church. And like, I think more about the way I dress on Sunday than I do any other day, but that doesn't actually mean that I dress well, because I don't.
But just so
I would say, like, when I was growing up at Stone Mountain at Zach's dad church, we had a family of like first generation Nigerians who came, and they came in daishikis every Sunday. Like they were in daishikis every Sunday. It was awesome.
Fire.
But like that was their dressing up for church, and they looked very different from us. But I think that it really, at the end of the day, comes down to a heart issue,
right?
And so it really comes down to what is the best that you want to bring, as opposed to what is the best that you have to bring.
I guess that's what I'm.
No, let me jump in real quick, because I think that like, you help clarify something. So, and this ties exactly with what you're saying, Justin. So that family that you mentioned, so they came to church and they were reflecting their culture, right? Which was unique because we're in America, and they're reflecting actually Nigerian culture.
And it was a very white church.
And it was a totally different thing, which was fine. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. In fact, they gave me a dashiki, and I couldn't pull it off the same way. You know,
you don't say.
Shocker,
me, dude?
shocker. I did my best. Didn't pull it off the same way.
Wow.
But but this is what I'm saying. So it is true that we, the way that most of us dress at church is really nothing more than a reflection of our own culture. I guess my question is, well, what do you do when your culture has lost culturally decorum?
But doesn't that go back to the heart issue too?
Oh, for sure it does. 100%.
It's just like when Jesus tells the story of the woman who gives half a darius, and the other guy that gives like 2 shekels or whatever. She gives her last thing. The focus is not on the money. It's on what you're giving. It's just like some homeless guy walking in with rags.
It wasn't about what she was giving.
Right.
It was about the heart.
The heart. And I think when you start focusing so much on what you're dressing like in the church, that's where you start going
I completely agree.
It doesn't matter if you have the best suit
right.
in the church. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely. But this is what I'm trying to invoke. We don't have a conversation about it at all. There is no conversation about that whatsoever.
Right.
And we can look at the historical reasons why we're in the place that we are. I'm just saying, I watched a video that reflected an earlier time in America. And it was like, wow. Well, I think as a culture, we've really lost something. And then I started thinking about, well, what have we lost as a culture? And the church has reflected culture in the way that we handle attire. And the essence of my question is like, should we rethink this? Because are we losing something that should not have been lost at all? And I'm not saying we dress up to impress God. That is not biblical or sound. But the priests were given a prescribed attire, and we are called priests. My point is that, listen, and this might, like, the application of this might go no further than like, man, I should probably actually wear pants to church on Sunday.
You take it one step further.
Instead of what I literally wore to bed last night.
Yeah.
Like, it can be that simple. Like, I'm not saying we're dressing up and we've got full dresses and we're suits and ties. Like, I'm just saying, from a heart perspective for each of us.
Yeah.
It's like, Lord, this is not about me showing anything, proving anything, but this is about like what I look like reflecting my attitude.
Well, this is our temple. Like, how do you choose to ordain that temple? How do you choose to use what the Lord has given you to go out in public? Like, this body isn't ours.
Yeah.
It's what's given.
Yeah.
How do you choose to ordinate it and go out into the public to be a temple? How are you going to address it?
And by the way, wearing a Get Fed Today shirt or
Dude,
an Outlaw Radio
absolutely.
shirt to church is completely appropriate.
Gold bricks in heaven, baby.
Absolutely.
In fact, it
Gold
makes us
bricks.
a little bit better than you.
Yeah. Yeah, says the guy that has the only one of that shirt that exists.
He's the highest. He's the highest. He's the 12th.
Nick, you were wanting to jump
Isn't
in.
there a saying that like the outward reflects the inward?
Yeah.
Like, is something like that. I don't know if that's a perfect definition of it, but like, so if the outward reflects the inward, like if you're ready Sunday morning, you're ready to go get to Jesus, you're going to go put on your best because you're ready for him. Like, your inward is ready. It's feeling its best. It's going to go worship Jesus. So the outward should kind of fit that. That's kind of a weird.
Let me ask you a quick question, because I think you're a great example of this. Your work is construction.
Oh yeah.
You're a train wreck 9 to 5.
You've seen me.
Yes. And rightfully so. I mean, like, why am I going to wear anything I care about getting messed up? Because I'm
not spending $140 on an outfit every single week.
I'm doing tile and sheetrock, and I'm a layman. Like, I'm working hard with my hands. And then you hang out with me a lot, and most of the time it's sweatpants and a comfy t-shirt,
yep.
A Brave shirt, but like, you dress down 99% of the time, just in general.
Yep.
But, and this is my point, on Sunday, you always look fly. Like, on Sunday, so why is that? Why is it that Sunday, Nick Monty looks GQ?
It's probably because of that. I mean,
there's something inside.
There's something inside, and there's also something inside of me that, like, when I get dressed up, I was talking about the first date, or even going to church. When you get dressed up, when you put on those nice clothes, it actually kind of makes you feel good. Like, you feel good. You have it's probably a little bit selfish, a little bit stuff like that, because you're like, I've got it today and stuff. But
it's why I wear a black shirt. It's like,
it gets you out. It gets you going.
Yeah.
It gets you in a good mood. Well, that good mood is going to get followed by Jesus Christ hitting you in the face, which either can be very good and sometimes can be very bad. But
yeah,
that's beside the point. But
and I think that's a personal thing. And there's a personal reflection to that. Yeah.
I just had a close to recovery memory I've had. So
you mumbled through.
Recovered memory I've ever had.
Okay.
So surprisingly, I was a nerd in high school. We just had nerd friends.
You're a nerd now.
So I had a really close female friend who, whenever we had a big test coming up, she would come to school dressed to the nines. And her answer was always that she dressed for the attitude she wanted to have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, she came in for test dressed up because she wanted to look it, she wanted to feel it, she wanted to be it or whatever.
Dress for success. There's a psychology to it. Yeah.
There's and once again, we can get into there are definitely pitfalls there.
Yeah.
In terms of getting too into the clothing and too into the makeup and too into whatever.
Or showing off to other people. That's not even the intention.
Yeah. But for her, it was not about that. It was just like, it's a test. I want to do well. I want to look good, and looking good is going to help me to be in the right mindset to do well. I think
that's a great example.
I think that is exactly what you're talking about. Was come to dress for success, whatever success is. Because I mean, Nick is dressing for success when he dresses in whatever he does for concrete work.
Yeah,
just whatever success is.
But then he
and then there's the decorum.
Sunday
when you come
is
to church.
different.
Yeah, because you're dressing to come to God.
I think one of the things. Okay, so where did it change? This might have been one of the changes. I think a lot of people wearing a suit and tie was common attire every day. Mm-hmm. Like that's what they did.
Yeah, true.
And then it was like, then at church, there was this like, hey, you can just be you. You can just come as you are. And it was like, oh, I can get rid of this. Like, I don't have to have this because this isn't me anyway. I just have to wear this. And I wear it all day. So wearing a suit and a tie to church was nothing new. It was the continuation of this facade of who I am anyway.
You could almost say that comfy coats was the decorum of the day.
It's the inverse.
Yeah.
So now we're like, and this is my point in the culture.
Now
it's like
opposite.
Now it's the opposite. And should we have at least a conversation to think about something that I don't think. When was the last time you ever heard anybody bring up how we should dress in church?
Suit and tie Sundays, baby.
What?
I'm not wearing a tie.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Suit Sundays.
Well, let me you get any online any comments, anything?
Let me double check.
Well, while you're
I
double
haven't gotten
checking
anything from YouTube. If you're on YouTube and you left, I think the comments might be off. YouTube is acting weird. I apologize. We have Miss Ann says hello. Everyone say hello. Hi, Miss Ann. A Miss Colette.
What up,
she wonders.
What up, Mom?
She wonders if those who do dress up for coming to church are made fun of or put down for worshiping God in that way.
She's telling screw them. You can do whatever you would like.
I think what she's getting at is the idea is like, if somebody comes to 316 with a blazer on,
it's easy.
It's a bit.
That's an easy example.
Disconcerting.
No,
that's an easy example. No, we got two guys that do, and one of them in particular comes out of a Catholic background, and it's kind of the non-negotiable. Like he just, again, getting back to how he feels, like there is a measure of respect and some decorum, but there should be no judgment about him dressing up.
Absolutely not.
As long as there's no judgment about others dressing. Like, again, the conversation is like, should we be judging one another? No, not at all.
It shouldn't matter.
This
should be the position
doesn't
of the
matter
heart for the individual. It shouldn't matter.
And if you're dressing to try to earn something from God or demonstrate you're good enough for him, wrong reason. That's not the conversation whatsoever. But no one should be made fun of, and they should be welcomed and respected. And like that's the manifestation of their own faith. You can check more of the comments. I want to very quickly close by sharing.
I'm good on comments. So you go.
Okay. Apparently, I don't know if the audience knows this or if you guys even know it, but my uncle Ken, pastors a massive church south of the airport down in Coweta County. And apparently this Sunday, I haven't watched it yet, but he took a clip of the testimony I gave at the Calvary Chapel Deep South Conference about my story and what happened. And he shared that clip in his sermon on Sunday, which probably meant that it was seen by more people than it had ever been seen before, because, he's Baptist. And then he posted it on his Facebook page, and it's gotten a lot of traction from that. But the clip that he showed in particular was the section where I'm talking about Jesus and the disciples bringing to him the man born blind. They say, well, was this his sin or the sin of his parents? They want causation. And Jesus says, neither. This happened so that the works of God might be revealed, and he heals him, which sounds great for everybody but the blind guy, because the implications for the blind guy is that he didn't do anything. This had happened to him just so he could get healed. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And following Jesus can be a dangerous thing if you give him your life. Anyway, I ended up getting, I saw there was a comment on one of the posts on Facebook about the guy had just said, thank you so much for this. It corrected my theology and it needed to be done. And I replied to it. I said, how so? Like, I'm curious. And so he private messaged me, and you'll understand why. So I'm not going to mention his name. He says, Zach, I felt it was best to private message my answer. I found my dad from suicide when I was 13. At 24, I was beside my mom when improper sheetrock leaned against studs fan back to trap my mom to her death. When my first pastor arrived at the hospital, he told me, quote, "Because of your sins, your mom died like this."
What?
She died 2 days later. I was 24. I'd been taught at my previous church our sins cause sickness and death. Ken Adams befriended me in the gym when I was 19. He invited me for years. It wasn't until 6 years ago that I finally took the invite. I've learned more in 6 years of the Bible and Jesus than ever before. Your video testimony is astonishing. I'm reminded of Matthew 7:28 of Jesus' abilities. I'll be praying for your continued strength and encouragement. And I just thought, wow, bad theology, man, is a bad representation of God.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
And it hurts people, and it
hurts to hear.
dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's 13 years old. He finds his dad dead from suicide, and then he's there when his mom tragically dies, and then at the hospital, pastor's like, "Yeah, this is because of your sin." It's the man born blind.
Yeah.
And
It's insane that people still have that theology.
oh, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. Health and wealth is huge,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
It's because they can do something better to better their life around them. It's because they can do something. And
it's
they can
works
do
based.
this. Yeah, it's all works
for sure. But I just, again, it was just one of those subtle reminders of like, bad theology has bad consequences.
Yes, it does.
And proper theology provides incredible liberation.
Amen.
Because this man needed to know that it was not his fault, and that God is a God of grace and mercy.
Yeah.
And
so cool.
and it was just here so many months after the fact to
That's
just get
crazy.
get a message from somebody I've never met. I have no idea who this
Yep.
person is.
Oh, that's cool.
And I thought that was pretty cool and encouraging. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So anything you guys got?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Anything else? Well, we're about.
If you want to hear more of God's word, go to getfedtoday.com.
There you
Amen.
go.
There you
Hey
go.
man,
Nice plug.
Every day.
hey, you stumbled out of the gate, but you're coming in strong here at the end.
I'm trying to redeem myself of my mistakes at the beginning.
There
So
you go.
Good
Finish
for you.
strong.
What was that website again?
getfedtoday.com. You can find us or find that podcast on
Oh.
any of the podcast
You're stumbling at the finish line.
systems that you use, whether that be Spotify, Google, or Apple.
There you go.
And I'm pretty sure you could probably find it on YouTube or something like that too.
Landed the plane, Justin. There you
Oh,
go,
yeah.
Spice Daddy. Creighton, thank you for being with me.
Always.
So you have been listening to the Outlaw Radio Show. Once again, my name is Zach Adams. I pastor a church outside of Athens, Georgia, Calvary 316. If you are listening to this episode of the Outlaw Radio Show on our podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, I encourage you to join us Wednesday at 8 p.m. where we live stream the recording of what you're listening to. If you are watching the live stream, check out the podcast. Very easy to share that on your social media networks. Pass the word about the Outlaw Radio Show. You can learn more about the show at outlawradio.org. Outlawradio.org. Once again, I'm Zach. Hope you join me this time next week. God bless.